laughter meets inner peace.
We're your host, Shaka.
And I'm Kaiana.
And we just want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of your favorite podcast, Alignment and Healing. We want to thank everyone who is viewing the podcast right now. Remember to tell a friend that we just dropped an episode and to tune in. We want to thank everyone for commenting, liking, subscribing, and of course, sharing the podcast. Today, we have an amazing episode for you. What are we talking about today, Kaiana?
Yeah, so today we're talking about protecting our boys. So often, in society, whenever we see an older man being a predator to young girls, we call it out, rightfully so, because that is not okay for, older men to be preying on young girls, especially if they're underage. But today we want to shed light on when it's the reverse scenario where it's an older woman that's preying on a younger boy, which is not talked about enough.
Yeah.
Which is not talked about enough. In about 10% of all rape or sexual abuse is reported globally, and that is grossly underrepresented.
Yeah,
and
terrible.
It's even more so when it's an older woman involved with a young boy, because for a mirage of reasons, right?
Yeah.
So many things will impact why they would do so. But today we want to talk about it. We want to shed light on why that's not okay, because
it's a good topic.
It's a lot of times young men think that, and we're going to get into that it's okay. And it's an imbalance of power, especially when it's an older woman involved. And we want to shed light on that because it is not okay. More people need to have this conversation. Again, it's grossly underreported. We don't even know how many young men and young boys are affected by this. Yeah. And we just want to bring awareness to that within our community. Yeah. So let's dive in. Pull up a seat. If you're someone who've experienced that and you're comfortable, feel free to share in the comments. Let us know, if this is something you even thought about, as a parent, and you have younger sons. Do you think about this, affecting them?
Yeah, that's a great. I think this is really good. We really need to talk about everything in the society. If it's happening on one side and happening on the other side, we want to protect our girls, right? Mm-hmm. Of course, and we can easily seek out the predators when it comes to girls, right? Because us women, we're so protective. We're always looking for it, but it happens a lot to boys too. Yes. Right? And it has a lot of implications. And we never want to do a topic that's one-sided. Yes, mm-hmm. We are both women, and we have, spoken about, this on the other side before, but we want to talk about it for, as it pertains to the boys and our males, right? So I think it's really good, for us to discuss it, because it's something that a lot, it's not discussed, as Kiana mentioned, it's sexual abuse, or, pedophilia basically is barely reported in general, especially in our Caribbean society. We don't want to talk about it. That's shame, right? Yes. And that's for young girls. When it comes to men, it's not even seen as a thing. A lot of times they're like, whatever, and they hush it up. But mm-hmm. It does have a lot of implications. So we want to talk about it. We really want to make sure that we're having that conversation because we want to help everyone, right? So why is it not taken seriously, right? That's the first thing. Why is it not taken seriously? So boys are usually taught early about, sex and manhood and stuff like that, right? So society usually see men as predators and not women as predators, which both can, they can both be predators. Once Absolutely. You're older, there is a power imbalance. And think about it, if you have a young boy, a young son or whatever, and this way old who's already experienced, think about, would you want them getting together? Just visualize that. You wouldn't want to, because mm-hmm. that she will be taking advantage of that child. Another thing too, men are considered as, over sexualized. They'll be like, oh, they want the sex, or they glad to have it, or whatever. But that's not always the case. Some mm-hmm. kids are really innocent, and when they're when these older women predators take advantage of them, then they become over sexualized, and then mm-hmm. could eventually continue the abuse, right? And even, you know, in our Caribbean society, we would joke about it. Oh God, you know, he like big woman, these different things, and that's not funny. We need to cut it out, right?
Yeah.
We really need to change the conversation that we're having with these things, because regardless, we still have an age of consent. Boys or girls, we still have an age of consent, right? And you will hear things like, oh, he looking, all these different things. No, at the end of the day, if they're not of age, it shouldn't happen, you know?
Absolutely. And another thing too is that you mentioned earlier, women are not seen as predators, right? Which is also a problem. Like, in our society, we definitely are way more suspicious of men. And I'm not saying, that there's not cause for that, because there is also a prevalence of sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Where men are the perpetrators, right? They're the ones that are doing that violence. But we have to be fair and we have to be honest and include women. Some women are also abusers, and we need to call them out. Sometimes there are teachers being involved with school boys. Sometimes it's nurses. It could be any profession. It doesn't matter. And the thing is, like you mentioned, is that boys are taught to be so over sexualized. Like, if you're getting sexual attention, it should be praised. It should be,
that's true.
It should be celebrated, because, like you said, you're lucky. You're getting some. You're 13, and this 20-year-old woman wants you, boy. Like, that is, that's amazing. But really, truly, if the tables were turned, and that was a 13-year-old girl with a 20-year-old man, we would not condone that.
Yeah.
So why are we condoning that when it comes to our young boys, our boys that are school age and cannot consent for themselves because they're minors, And it needs to be said that it's not okay, whether it's an older man or older woman. Neither are okay. These are children, and our kids need to be protected, right? Because so often what also ends up happening is that sometimes the father or the guardian or the uncle of these boys also expose them to these types of abuse to women. Like, they may have an older friend, and then they might tell them, like, oh, link up with my nephew, show him two things, because that's how you become a man. Like, ask a lot of men. That has been their story.
Yeah, that's been their story.
And a lot of them don't even realize that they were sexually abused, that their intro into a sexual experience was abuse.
Yeah.
So a lot of times women are not seen as predators, but we need to also view that it's possible that women can also be predators, and we have to call that out. As a culture, like, we protect women, like, we're very much so pro women, but we also have to call out and put predators in their place, be it a man or a woman. It doesn't matter. If they're causing harm, they must be called out.
You got me thinking about just culturally or in general. I think like when boys are younger, it'd be like, oh, girls gonna be come knocking at your door for your son. You ever, like, we would say that, but if it's a young girl, we wouldn't say, oh, you gotta like chase the boys away. We wouldn't say that. We do more over sexualize the boys when you think about it.
Or he gonna break out the heart.
Well, we wouldn't say that for girls. We wouldn't usually say that for girls.
Exactly, because you can't have a man until you're 30. So
exactly, and that is true. Even girlfriends are more encouraged with younger boys than, or a lot of girlfriends are more encouraged with younger boys. Exactly, than like if a father sees his son having a lot of girlfriends, they won't be upset. But if it's their daughter, they would be upset. But that's the point to say, like, it's how they're introduced to, like, the sex more, like, the sexualization earlier, right? But you want to talk about how it does affect people, how it does affect, these young men, because a lot of viewers might be sitting here thinking, oh, you know what, it didn't affect me. I had this young this big lady, and she wanted me, blah blah blah. But you don't know how it actually impacted you emotionally, right? So people might think that that they're fine, but what it can do, it can cause you to think, like, wire sex to be like validation, right? Like you have, because you have this early sexual attention, right? That's something that you feel that makes you a man, or and so hence you can go out having a lot of sex with a lot of people, because that would make you earn this attention at an early age, right? And we don't want that. Also, like, it confuses with boundaries, right? Because as as a young child, you don't know what boundaries is. You don't understand that this woman is literally taking advantage of you, right? So you could kind of be, confused as in like what a healthy relationship supposed to be like.
That's a good point,
right? Because you might be thinking to, oh, we just in a relationship or whatever, but this woman, she is a predator. She knows that she's supposed to be doing better. So like, it's secretive. It's unhealthy, right? If she taking advantage of you, advantage of your body, right? And you thinking certain things is acceptable when it's not, right? And you might feel like you're not even allowed to say no because she is an older person, right? Which causes issues in itself, right?
Yeah. What this reminded me of is like one of her favorite movies, 50 Shades of Grey. Listen, the movie, like, there's no one to the story.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Christian, the main character, his first sexual encounter was with a much older woman who introduced him to the lifestyle of BDSM, right? It's a bit out there, but an older woman, basically, what we would say, it should turn me out, right? And
which is not even a good thing. Which is not a good thing. Joking as a term, but it's a good term.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you really pay attention to the story, that messed up his perception of what a healthy dynamic and relationship is. Like, while you were talking, I was thinking of that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what happened to Christian.
Oh my God, that's a really, really good example. Good connection. Exactly, but that's like a perfect example if you guys don't know. But yes, eventually the way he related to sex, or more the men would relate to sex, it's different, right? And it could be more risque, but basically at the end of the day, unhealthy, right? And that's what we don't want. So viewers, let us know if you've had that experience. If you want to share, let us know if that affected you. I know that it might be a hard thing, and maybe thinking back about it, oh, you know what, maybe I would have been doing things like this, or I want to be at a certain place, or and now think about it, the man grew up, what happens, so definitely that's something that could affect you emotionally and sexually in the future, right? So another thing too is obviously being exposed so early, right? It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. Your brain develops after a certain point, and boys develop even later, right? So if you are having mature relations before time, right, it can definitely affect your brain development. It could affect your relationships and all of these different things. So it's really important, not because, you're a man, or, and I know that some people might be like, duh, but no, as you mentioned, like, as we would have a term that says, broke out early, or she broke you out, or whatever. That is like a comical term, and it's a serious issue, and that's why we're talking about it.
It is so serious, because a lot of men, like, some of them might say yes, it's okay if their sons got introduced early, but
not my
really
son.
And truly, right? I was just thinking of that. Like, if I have a son, like any of my nephew, like, I feel like I would fight that person. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should.
Because
where they should go? Jail.
Absolutely.
That's where they should go.
Absolutely.
But sometimes we spare both predators, men and women. But she should go to jail.
Many times I feel like women get off way easier than men.
Yes.
And that's it. And a lot of men do get off too. So not to say that men, justice needs to be given across the board. Like, that's the point we're getting. We're not saying that, to cuddle men either. Like, no, if you do something wrong, if you're a predator, you got to go clink clink behind bars, because you can't be out here harming kids, harming people, Yeah. And it's so crazy, like, the example that I brought up with Christian Grey. It's like perfect textbook example of what happens when a young man is sexually abused or introduced to sex abuse. Let's call it that. Not introduced to sex. Like, he was a teenager. She was in her probably 40s, early 40s or 30s.
I was his mom's best friend.
Exactly.
I know we're talking about a movie, but this is classic, as you mentioned, classic textbook. Yeah,
I've had friends with guys who sometimes it's like a married woman also who introduced them to that lifestyle, and a lot of them think like, oh, they need to be there to get experience from an older woman, and they think that that's what they're supposed to do because being with a girl their age, like, oh, if they're inexperienced, she's inexperienced, and who's going to teach who? So a lot of times they feel as though they need to seek these experiences.
You need to learn together.
Exactly.
So why you must come with you body broke out, and she must take you broke out body?
But that's
I'm sorry.
That's how it's been since the beginning of time. Men are frequently, like brothels and stuff like that. Look at Bridgerton. They're all poured out by the time they're ready to get married. They all probably have a million STDs before they get married.
Back then, when you couldn't test for it, I think a lot of them didn't even. I read a lot of those stuff.
They said in real life they probably all had syphilis, and I'm like, that makes sense. But yeah, so back to the example. What happens when a boy's first taste or first experience is literally of sex is somebody who abuses them, an older woman. It really messes with the way that they think and how they perceive intimacy.
Yeah.
Because their natural inclination is also to become like mistrusting, because a lot of times somehow deep down I feel like like the dynamic was not right.
Yep.
So it kind of messes with their view of intimacy,
That's
and men, if you disagree or agree, leave a comment in the in the comments below. Because something is not right. Because a lot of times I've heard Kev on stage, like one of our favorite comedians, he was mentioning his experience too was like a babysitter or something like that, like an older woman who was fondling his penis and stuff like that. And it's like a lot of times, like their body is aroused, but it's confusing because something is not right. Like this is like yes, I feel it, but also like it's confusing. So it makes like this confusing feeling within their bodies, and then they don't know whether or not, and that lives inside of you because it's an experience and it's trauma. And again, a lot of times you don't acknowledge it as trauma because you don't realize that what that person did to you was wrong. Because once again, society, culture, hypersexualized men saying that this is what they should want, this is what they should like.
Correct.
And nothing's wrong if you want to have sex, but you can do that on your own time when you're of an age, when you're of the right mindset, when you can fully consent. And if you cannot fully consent, then that causes you so much harm.
Yeah.
And that kind of experience definitely breaks like your trust in intimacy and how you go about intimacy thereafter. You might not even realize that you're not doing it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Right? Not to say that you're going around, harming women. I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
But
you can.
You can, yeah. And sometimes
you can.
You become so hypersexualized, like, just to use somebody's body because, somebody used yours.
Yep. That's good. So the main thing what we need to do is at least, take it serious. I feel like that's something that we most certainly do. As you mentioned, even with Kim on stage or whatever, he, thought back about it and was like, oh, that wasn't right. And when, people complain about it, be like, oh, wow, this good, bye. You get through, blah, blah, blah. And we're not taking it serious. And I think that's one of the main things. That's why we want to talk about it. Like, it's very serious for us to, we need to make sure that we're taking this serious. Like, it's Absolutely. An issue because, once again, it can be a cycle. Because, as you mentioned, right, there's a confusing relationship, with sex. And then no boundaries. Then what do you think happened? They go and push the boundaries with someone else. And then, because even the woman that might have done this to this boy, she could have had her own experience.
That is true.
Right? So it's just this cycle that we're continuing, right? So it's why we need to put it to a stop on both ends. Because at the end of the day, a child is still a child, right? Regardless, male or female, a child is still a child. Right? And we need to, make sure that we protect them. Protection should not be based on gender, right? It doesn't matter. We need to ensure that we're taking this serious. And, dealing with abuse in itself is hard, right? It's something hard to do. And even, now that it's kind of, with men, we don't take it serious. So it maybe would be even harder to do, especially if the boy is saying, oh, mom is fine. I had a good time. Men be like, oh, he wanted it and all these different things. No, your job is to protect your child.
Yeah.
Period. Right? So I think that it's important that we know that boys deserve the same safety and guidance and space to grow, right? And to do things in the right time. Think about it. If think about how good things would be if men, like, the foundation that they had, especially regarding sex, was healthy. It's already so misplaced in society, right? Look at that stat that we saw recently about the 62 million men on the rape academy. Million men on the rape academy, watching how to rape your girlfriends, your spouses, and stuff like that, right? Think about if you had a healthy upbringing regarding sex, the start, the foundation, the protection, the guidance, right? We wouldn't even be in this place, right?
Yeah, and talking about that, like, this also is another thing that happens, and makes a lot of guys become addicted to porn.
Yes,
because that's another avenue they go down, having these experiences way too early. Having this abuse and again, porn absolutely is not a healthy.
A whole different.
That's a whole different thing. But I just thought of that. Like, that's another reason why a lot of times, more than likely, men are addicted. I don't know the stats about like how many men are like addicted to porn, but a lot of men are.
Yeah, especially now too. The number is increased because of it, and many other things have increased because of it. So indeed, I feel like this is something we need to focus on, because having it shouldn't be 62 million men. Like that's an insane, like it's a horrific statistic, right? And that's why we need to make sure that we're raising healthier men in terms of like sex and good relationship. Parents, we have a responsibility, and that's one thing we echo over and over in the show. We have a responsibility, and now you have a responsibility to protect your children. We need to protect all children from this.
Absolutely. And just to break the stats in, 62 million men is almost 50% of American men, of all the men in America, which is insane. That's like 1 in almost 2 men, like maybe 1 in 3. That's
almost 1 in 2 or 3 men you've met went on the website to learn how to rape their spouses. Right? And is that the kind of people you want your kids meeting in the world? You to meet in the world? Right? So protect kids. It starts by protecting kids from predators, be it male or female. It starts with protecting their minds and their bodies, and ensuring that they're safe, because a lot of times the predators are also the people that so you can't even say it's a stranger danger. It's more than likely someone that they know. So parents, you have to be on guard. You have to watch out for these type of predators. That's
for
true.
Both your girl kids as well as your boy children. Like, it doesn't matter. You have to keep a watchful eye to make sure that they're both protected. And this is the point of this episode, is that it's not good enough for us to look out for girls. We have to look out for our boys as well. So we hope that this you would have taken something away with this. If you've had this experience and you're comfortable sharing, please let us know. But one thing we want you to know is that even if that happened to you and you did not realize that it was harm, it is not your fault. It was not your fault. You were not at the age to consent. If it happened to you and you did not consent, that was not your fault. Someone took advantage of you, and the harm is on them, because that's not what they're supposed to do, and we want to reinforce that. Like, don't be ashamed to speak out and abuse, because we cannot keep predators in the dark. They must be brought to light, and if possible, face justice. because it's not okay. We cannot keep having them hide in our society, in our culture, and
even
sweep
if
it
it's your
under the
family.
rug. Even if, especially if it's your family, like, it doesn't matter. It does not matter who it is. A predator is a predator, and they must be called out. They must be dealt with.
Yes.
But please, share this episode with someone, like, comment. If you have not yet subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do so. Please remember that we are available to listen on all podcast platforms. So give us a listen there. Subscribe wherever you may listen to your podcast. Check out our merch store at lineandhealing.com and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at lineandhealing.com. Everything is pretty easy so that you don't have to worry about it. We appreciate your viewership. Thank you for staying tuned. Tell a friend to tell a friend that Lyman and Healing is back, and we're so excited to bring many more episodes to you. So until we meet again, remember to
bust a lime.
See you next time.